Hello, I'm David Gauntlett from the University of Westminster, continuing this series of videos about research methods and processes. We've just done a workshop for the RSA, that's the Royal Society for the Encouragement of Arts, Manufactures and Commerce. They have a network of several thousand fellows who could be facilitated or enabled to come together, collaborate and work on civic innovation projects. But how to do that? We did a workshop to explore those questions with a small group of fellows. They used plasticine and Lego, the combination of plasticine and Lego this time, plus some objects they brought in themselves representing their ideas and aspirations for the fellowship. And they collaboratively built models expressing what they thought the network should be, what their aspirations for it were, and where they thought it should go. We've got some video of those models that they've made. In the first example, a guy called Stefan, who was not part of the group, he has been invited to summarise the group's model because they explained it to him over coffee. This shows the way in which visualising some ideas, making them concrete, means you can then communicate and explain them to other people and they still make sense.
Apparently this part of the model are portals through which the world and the members view the RSA. This is a listening device for picking up those ideas, and this is an RSA member looking to the future. And then these are various forms of networks, I think both sort of direct human contact and the sort of the digital Twittery world.
Which is the digital Twittery world?
I think this is more the digital.
Digital and analog.
Yeah, I think we need to just make sure that that's correct because, Fred, this is actually the joining of the digital and the analog, which is a very tricky conjunction.
And then this I particularly like. This is the wood from which ideas spring, the soil from which ideas spring. So these are just wonderful, independent ideas. And then it all comes together. This is sort of like the arch representation of the RSA, all these wonderful links fed from these various sources.
I'll just say that this is actually a sort of banyan tree, and it's a type of tree that roots down and grows new ones everywhere, so it just goes on doing that and growing up. And I mean, it might become a bit junglish, but at the same time it is sort of planting itself sort of all around the place, so that's the sort of...
So, this represents tradition. This is golf, and I suppose what the RSA was. This is connectivity to the key. These are a series of pink balls, and this is a bridge, but also a platform. So how come in practical real terms can we actually genuinely meet everybody, both clearly this morning, both emotionally, intellectually, but also facilitating their particular interests? We all have different organisations. Some of us work in the charity, some of us work in the for-profit, some of us work in education, blah, 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 blah. So how can we actually facilitate that in something that meets all of those? So we sort of had a little radical thought that maybe the intention isn't necessarily to capture all of that, but to create some environment where different thoughts and different talents and different ideas could meet each other on their own particular journey within the vestibule or within some sort of cradle, there's the RSA, that meets everybody's particular ambitions and interests. And that's as far as we got.
Thank you. There's lots of stuff in that then. Could you have a go at a 1 or 2 sentence summary?
Yes. Old meets new through not trying to control even though you want to.
Okay. Thank you.
We had an interesting process where people produced things that seemed to be unrelated but beautiful, and therefore raised questions as to why, which some people didn't necessarily want to be asked why. They just wanted beautiful things to be a part part of the process. Other people were very structured and wanted things to, I suppose, represent, whether it was a process or an outcome, harmony or foundations or building or outcomes or I guess the concept of tangible outcomes that the RSA can bring. It's not fit for purpose. It's a total conglomeration. No one can explain it. No one can control it. Everyone wants to try to, or at least have an impact. And I guess once you acknowledge that, there's that element of sort of trying to be able to describe the whole, but really it's very difficult. And that's kind of a representation of where the RSA is and maybe where it should be, because that's where you get the multidisciplinary approach. That's where you get amazing far out, way out things like an aubergine sitting underneath your platform. But at the same time, it's still quite nice to observe and to be a part of, and to know that you were, I guess, responsible for building it.
Gatsby, talk about your balance at the end.
That was the harmony between technologies and art, between science and culture, or that everything is one, no? That symbolizes, and the Royal Society is the big balance. And there was also one detail, and that means that even the smallest detail is important.
Well, that's nice.
I mean, it's basically that you have people who fell over. You might have somebody trying to lead something and control and command, but you also have things that just come into the space that people bring in because they think they're interesting and right and representative, and they want to bring in and share. You have a permeable membrane around it. You have bits and pieces that are still outside it that we might go off and do outside of it, and that's it. And it's messy and it's inexplicable. But hopefully it's all for some greater positive reason.
An interesting aspect of the workshops for me was that those who trusted in the process and made their own individual metaphorical objects and then took part in the collaborative process to combine them and put them together and make one shared model, it really worked for them. Those people who felt that they should, just have a discussion where they maybe moan about how things have gone in the past, that doesn't really get anywhere. Even if you were trying to create a vision using language, I think that language is quite difficult for that. And having people making objects with their hands, then putting them all together, means that the meanings are locked into the objects, and that all of those contributions go into the shared model. And that's really valuable and sort of captures everybody's ideas and gets them to think about how those things go together, how they fit together, and what this leads to looking towards the future. It really confirmed it for me that works very well, whereas just talking doesn't. Obviously this is a process through which people discuss, they make and discuss, so there's lots of talking, but a facilitated form of talking which seems to be valuable. One bit of feedback that was from Laura Billings, who took part in the workshop. She says, making the models not only forces you to crystallise your own thoughts and think in the bigger picture, but making it in the real world seems to give it more power. I will forever remember the platform balancing on an aubergine, she says, and think that the fellowship is indeed made of many individual personalities. The concept of the RSA as a portal and the fellowship as a self-perpetuating banyan tree were positive and aspirational. I guess the only criticism is that you need people to leave their cynicism at the door for it to work well, which is absolutely true. So it was a very interesting workshop using slightly different materials to before, and some very interesting outcomes. If you want to know the detail of those outcomes for the RSA, they're captured very well by the blogs and reports made by the participants themselves. And you can find pointers to those at this web address here. That gives you more detail. I've just talked about the process so far, really.